Welcome back to the lineup. My name is Lily DT. I'm here on the publicity team at Soho Press. We're so happy that you joined us again for a really wonderful author event this afternoon. We're going to do some very quick housekeeping stuff before we begin with Jasper and Leonie. This series is focused on highlighting Soho crime authors and some not so Soho crime authors, which we'll talk about today. And giving them a digital platform to talk about their work. Our next event is going to be on July 1st at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to feature Quay Porty and Sam Bett in conversation with Catherine Butner. And it'll be a discussion about international queer crime fiction, which will be awesome. Very much looking forward to it. You can sign up for that one on the website, sohocrimelineup.com, to reserve your spot. And we really could not do this event series without the help of Mystery to Me. So if one of these books speaks to you today, there's a little green buy button at the bottom of the screen where you can purchase the books that have been signed, book plated by Jasper and Leonie directly from Mystery to Me, and it really helps, obviously, the independent bookstore economy. So we really appreciate you doing that in advance. Thank you. Lauren and Elizabeth are working very hard for us behind the scenes to make sure this series is going. So today we will be giving out a few door prizes at the end, so make sure you stick around. There's some Mystery to Me gift cards as a thank you for registering and attending. And all of these events are recorded as they are live streamed. So if you need to step away, or if you have a friend who would like to tune in a little bit after the fact, you can send this link and share the love with them that way. Finally, at the very end of this event, we always reserve some space for questions. So on the right side of your screen, there is a little thought bubble with a question mark. You can submit questions there, and we will get to as many as we have time to. So thank you again for being here. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the authors that are joining us this afternoon. First, and a repeat attendee of the lineup, Leonie Swann grew up near Munich and earned degrees in philosophy, communications, and psychology from Munich University and the Munich School of Philosophy. Her debut novel, 3 Bags Full, was published in 2005 and became an instant hit, leading the German bestseller charts for months. It has since been translated into 26 languages and won the prestigious Glauser Prize for crime fiction in the debut category, as well as the PETA Award. She has now published 6 books and lives and works in the English countryside near Cambridge. Her new novel, Agnes Sharp and the Trip of a Lifetime, is the highly anticipated follow-up to The Sunset Years of Agnes Sharp. The novel finds Agnes and her octogenarian friends face to face with a killer after winning a trip to a beautiful hotel in the seaside town of Cornwall. Welcome back, Leonie. Always a pleasure to have you here. Jasper Fforde spent 20 years in the film business before debuting on the New York Times bestseller list with The Air Affair in 2001. Since then, he has written another 15 novels, including The Big Over Easy, The Constant Rabbit, and Shades of Grey. Fforde lives and works in his adopted nation of Wales. Visit Jasper's website, jasperfforde.com, or find him on Facebook, X, and Threads, and Instagram at Jasper Fforde. His new novel, Red Side Story, is the long-awaited follow-up to the New York Times best-selling Shades of Grey. The new novel follows 2 star-crossed lovers on a quest to survive in a color-vision segregated society. So welcome, both of you. Very excited to talk about humor and heart today in fiction. I always give a tiny little brief synopsis of the books that we're discussing, but I find that it comes off better when authors talk about their own books. So would you each maybe give us a little bit of a description of your newest book in this series that they belong to? Leonie, do you want to start?
Gosh, I'll try to demonstrate that it could also be worse if the authors themselves introduce their books. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but yeah, well, we have a house share of the elderly, a bit decrepit, but nonetheless quite plucky. But as you said, octogenarians. We don't know exactly how old they are, but they're old. That much is certain, and they happen to have backgrounds in, if not sort of policing or crime, there's some kind of I don't know, useful background to most of them, if they, on the days they remember their background, that is. And they also got Hetty the tortoise, who is, well, as a, as you might have guessed, a tortoise, but still an important part of the team. And they stumble on the odd murder. I mean, obviously in the first um, installment, and they will stumble in quite a few more in the second one. This time, as you said, in Cornwall, where they happen to end up after winning a romantic getaway, which obviously gets a lot less romantic once you arrive, I know, 5 people strong. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think.
Right. So, Red Side Story is a sequel to a book that I wrote about 14 years ago called Shades of Grey. It's set in a sort of future dystopia in which the hierarchy of the village, it's a very localized sort of society. The hierarchy is based on the colors that you can see. So if you can see the most amount of red, then you become the red prefect, and so forth. It's quite a sort of simple kind of conceit, but there's a lot of complexities once you add, humans into the mix. So it's really about these two characters, Eddie and Jane. And in the first book, Eddie comes to the village and is sort of has his eyes open to the iniquity of the system in which they live. And in the second book, we carry on the series and we realize that there is in fact a lot more about this world than we at first realized. It's sort of absurd, it's sort of satirical, it's kind of dark, and there's also a bit of comedy in it as well. So hopefully a little bit of something for everyone.
Yes, perfect. There are a few like cross themes between the two of you, and we often have these really interesting pairings here on the lineup, so we can talk about some of the differences between your books as well. But one question I think to kind of just get it out of the way is we are talking about 2 follow-up novels today. And they both have very different timelines. Jasper, you're saying yours, the first book in your series was written 14 years ago. So I was curious about the process of writing your second in series, both of you, and if the second book was always a part of your plan for the story. And whoever, just go on and answer.
Well, I would like to ask something, Jasper, because did you reread it before you started out, or did you
Oh
very
my God.
constantly planning? Because if I think about books I wrote 14 years ago, I would actually have to study up and to make sure that I really know all the
Oh my
details.
goodness. Yes, and there's it becomes very complicated, and I'll try and do this as a relatively short answer. Yes, I wrote it 14 years ago, and in that time, I completely forgot what was in it. So I had to reread it about, I think, 3 or 4 times. And the fourth times, I just took copious notes of nearly every little detail that I could find that I could potentially use or needed to reference in some way, just to, bring them together. So it was very clearly one author, one large book. When I was writing it, I thought, right, I'll carry on straight away. When the first book ends, it's about a week, 2 weeks later, and we just carry straight on with the story, because I figured people are going to reread Shades of Grey, and then they're going to go straight into Red Side Story. They're not going to want to go back 100 years or forward 100 years or tell it from the viewpoint of a goat or something wild and crazy. So we just carry it straight on.
Careful now.
Oh, careful. Okay. No, I write books about talking rabbits, so I'm totally on the page
All
with
right.
you
Okay.
about sheep and stuff. So talking animals are good as far as I'm concerned. Very good. So to approach it, I read it. I kept on rereading it, and I knew basically where I was going with it. But I tend to write. I don't know about you, but I tend to write completely, make it up as I go along. I'm very bad at planning, and because of that, I have this plan called the No Plan Plan, which is I put in lots of little details that I can pick up later and use. And then when people read it and they go, oh, I remember that from the first book, and that's yes, of course, it's all falling together. But all the other ones that I don't use, people conveniently don't remember, hopefully. And I can get away with it.
That kind of plan sounds familiar.
Yeah, that the No Plan Plan is you just carry on writing.
Yeah.
and then try and fit it all together. So it was kind of tricky, but once I got into it, I was really enjoying the characters, and it's very strange how specific characters in specific books have a specific voice that comes back to you, and you go, I know who this is, and diddly diddly diddly, out it comes. So, but it was good fun. I did enjoy it, I must say.
Yeah, I'm not a natural serial writer. I mean, it's some writers just, they have the investigator, especially in crime fiction, and they just throw them in case after case after case. And it's really, really tough on the poor person. Usually they end up with alcohol problems, all kinds of, difficulties. And I also find that it's quite, for me personally, it's not as interesting as making up something completely new usually. But in this specific case, I had this whole flat share of old people, and I sort of hinted at, some of their background, but there was just a lot I didn't know, and a lot I was still interested in. I was just quite interested in seeing them sort of act in a different environment, and obviously in a quite a not so terribly suited environment. You've got this posh hotel, and you've got them sort of bumbling around in there and trying to investigate murders. I just sort of basically wanted to confront them with the world, and confront the world with them, and see what happens. And it's also, on some other level, it's just really a lot easier, I found, because you've got your characters ready to go, and you know a lot about them already, so you don't start from scratch, and you already got quite a good idea of how they function, how they will react to certain situations, and you can give them more depth, obviously, but you got something to work with instantly. So I enjoy doing it, but yeah, as you know, there is going to be a third one of the same kind, but that will probably be it, unless there's a major miracle, because yeah, as I say, for me, the very best moment in writing, or one of the really good moments, is sitting down in front of a completely empty page and just having, being able to do whatever you want, and yeah, the page is your oyster. So in a way, sort of this serialization is not really lending itself to that.
It's a very good point. I mean, because series books, and I like writing standalone books, but I like writing series books too. And series books are great fun because you can just expand on themes that you've already been exploring, and also knowing that readers will have unanswered questions because they're like that. They're like little tearaways they are when it comes to reading, and they go, what about the so and so, and then you can kind of explore that, and I think that's a wonderful way to play with readers' expectation, is to expand on ideas you've just kind of thrown in, in the first book, and then use in the second. But then again, standalones are terrific too, because you can just absolutely, as you say, blank page and just anything goes, and I love that too. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, as we say in the UK.
I think the key thing is whether you still are interested in your characters or in your story. Or if you feel like, oh God, no, not that guy again, then you probably should stop. Yeah. But as long as you feel like, oh, I really can't wait to see what they're doing next, then it's probably a good reason to carry on.
And that's, done very well in both of your books, like picking up characters kind of where they left off and further developing them. Specifically, Leonie, we've talked about how much I love Edwina, and how in the second book she gets a little bit more background for those who have read The Sunset Years of Agnes Sharp. Anyway,
and a new sidekick.
And a new sidekick, which I'm going to talk about right now, actually.
Okay. All right.
Since we talked about the animals a little bit already. And Jasper, feel free to weigh in on this, since you are also a writer of animal perspective. But Leonie, you have sort of created a reputation for yourself for really utilizing animal perspective, animal point of view, really well in a way that really furthers your story. And it just is a very interesting lens with which to view crime fiction. And we've talked about this before, and you've talked about this before in Agnes Sharp. The first book, we have Hetty the tortoise. In this second book, we get Oberon, the vindictive boa constrictor. So, why include animal voices in your books, and why do you continue to choose to do that?
I think the plain simple answer is just that I really enjoy it. So for me, it just adds a different angle. And in a way, I feel my books are all about discovering the world and sort of getting a sort of unique angle on something that might be familiar, and how much more sort of skewed and unfamiliar can you get than sort of an animal point of view. I mean, everyone knows animals, but they're sort of very different from us, and at the same time there's enough in common that we can sort of empathize and sort of just make that step into that different type of consciousness. And it's just really nice to have a point of view that has completely different priorities from ours. If you've got Hetty the tortoise, she finds a dead body, and she doesn't think of the police. She doesn't think of, I don't know, who did it. She thinks about utilizing the residual warmth that's still there, and sort of snuggles up and sort of just takes advantage of the fresh murder victim. And once it cools down, she moves on. And it's just sort of, it's a way of introducing something it's as familiar as finding a body in a crime novel, which is obviously quite standard, in a way that hopefully makes it so fresh and fun and a bit different. So it's a lot about, and it has kind of also have a bit of a more serious angle, because obviously there's the gaze back at us humans, and having this outside perspective can give you quite a unfamiliar but also quite critical sort of glance. You get observed from a completely different vantage point, and that also, in terms of a crime story, can give you some new material to work with. So yeah, but the simple answer is it's fun. I enjoy it. I like animals. I like thinking about how they might function, how their inner workings might be. So, and yeah, apparently my readers enjoy it too. So yeah, there you go. Here we are.
Yeah, I mean, animals are great. I wrote a book called The Constant Rabbit, which I call my
That sounds
Brexit
like a good
anger
book.
book. Yeah,
Oh,
and
good.
it was
I gotta
really,
read that.
yeah, yeah. Have a read. It's quite fun. It's a kind of allegorical sort of satire, allegorical, and it supposes that these anthropomorphized rabbits are living in the UK, and the United Kingdom anti-rabbit party wants to get rid of them or rehome them in Wales, and it's basically about demonizing the minority other. But making them rabbits actually works really well, because humans and rabbits have not had a good relationship, and if you anthropomorphized a rabbit and it sort of started to ask you about, listen, about this whole experimentation thing, could we have words? That could be really embarrassing, if you've got to actually face
awkward,
up to that. So a little bit awkward, an awkward conversation. And then, of course, how do rabbits who were once pets view wild stock? So there are wild stock rabbits, pet stock rabbits, and lab stock rabbits. And how would they view each other? Because pet stock rabbits would sort of be looked upon as kind of, a bit, well, you were cozying up to the enemy there from the lab stock. So there's all kinds of elements that you can bring in using animals. But I do have a joke actually about a tortoise that gets mugged by snails. Would you like to hear it? It's quite good.
Please tell.
Yeah, okay.
Tell.
It's rather sweet. Jokes with animals in them are really sweet. I really like them. Anyway, so a tortoise gets mugged by 3 snails, right? And he's just going back, taking a shortcut through an alley after a night of drinking. Anyway, he gets mugged by 3 snails, and they take his watch and his wallet and his iPhone and everything. And the police ask him, did you get a good look at the assailants? And he said, well, no, it all happened so fast.
Oh,
quite sweet.
That is sweet.
It is sweet, yeah.
Yeah,
there have been a few jokes told in this series, and that was probably the sweetest one. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's a very sweet joke. Yeah.
I also had a tiny sort of Brexit reaction on because first of the Agnes Sharp series, the Sunset Years of Agnes Sharp, we do have a dog called Brexit, and I thought Brexit would be just a really good dog name. And as a matter of fact, it's the only thing you can do with Brexit. That's the only application I can think of that might be vaguely useful. So there you go, Brexit the dog.
Yeah. Another thing about animals, maybe you saw this on the news quite recently, but I was flicking through the news and it said that someone had been doing a study and they're saying that animals might be conscious. And I'm going, what? I thought animals were conscious. I didn't even know this was a thing. Apparently, yeah, I'm not an animal psychologist, but I have a dog and I think that dog is conscious. I mean, not
I
this
got a dog, yeah.
consciousness, this is different. Yeah. And it was so strange that somebody had decided that maybe they are conscious after all, animals. And I'm going, I thought they were, but who am I?
I
But
think
there you go.
everybody really knows. I think maybe it's not proven, but then how can you prove your spouse is conscious? It's
No.
the same problem, right?
No,
So,
no. I mean, yeah, the only person I know for sure who is conscious is me. So, and I'm not sure 100% there. So
That's fair. We can only ever be
it's
sure
tricky.
of ourselves, huh?
Yeah.
All right. One of the uniting, besides animal perspective and second in series, one of the uniting factors we've got here today is that you're just a couple of comedic geniuses and you inject it so well into your books. And I'm curious, especially in Jasper, it's important to note that Red Side Story is not in our crime imprint, so you're kind of a guest from the Soho Press. But you are acquainted with crime fiction. And so we see a lot of, very dark and sad and dismal themes. But we also see quite a bit of humor. And so I was curious about what each of your paths were into writing humor, if that's something that you even think about, or if it's kind of more second nature, if you consider yourselves humorous. And if you have any inspirations for the way that humor shows up in your novels.
Who first? Me? I don't know. Yeah, go for it. I think comedy is really important. I think it's one of the. It's hugely underrated. I think there's a lot of serious authors, and we know who we're talking about. You people who write human drama and win lots of awards and stuff. I think there's a lot of work out there, a lot of literary work, which I do not believe is fundamentally honest because they're not funny. Humans are dark and murderous and loving and joyful and funny. And if you leave that bit out, I think your characters are not realistic, especially if you're working in some dark areas, of crime. You will find if you've ever spoken to a policeman or a paramedic or a fire brigade, you'll have jaw-dropping moments of the darkness of their comedy that they use to get themselves through the day. I think many writers out there think that humor makes a book frivolous, and I don't believe that's true at all. And when you write funny books and comedy books, I think it's part of you. It has to be, because the one thing that you shouldn't try to do if you can't do it is comedy. It just doesn't work. You have to have not necessarily laugh out loud, telling silly jokes all the time, but a sense of lightness and sparkle in the way in which you sort of use your characters and the way they speak and the way they look to one another. So it doesn't necessarily have to be laugh out loud funny, but it has to be a sort of sense of charm, or maybe the ridiculous or the absurd that runs through it. I think it's vital. Books without comedy or some sort of funniness about them, I find very, very dry and unrealistic.
Yeah, I'm sort of, I second that. And in a way, I think I couldn't really write something without humor, even if I tried, because wouldn't say I do the whole thing for the humor, but it's just sort of, it's a nice thing if you think about it. Somebody reads your book and they smile or they laugh. I mean, how nice is that for that alone? It's sort of because there's not that many things in the world that, obviously there are many things to laugh at, but if you can contribute, isn't that great? And also, especially, I think if you've got darker bits, which I think you also almost need for writing good humor, because if it's all funny, sort of nothing is funny. You need the contrast for it to work well, in my opinion. And if you got that contrast, then if you're lucky and it works well, you will, the two bits will actually enhance each other. So you've got these sort of suspenseful bits, or the shocking bits, and you would have, I don't know, blood and gore and somebody's dead and things are rather dire. And then you got the humorous bit, because of that's the way sort of life, flashes up here and there. And the funnier bits will be funnier for all the problematic bits around it, at least as of my experience. And you call it comic relief for a reason, and it just really is a classic, and it works extremely well. And I think also if you're honest about characters, you probably will end up sort of with a humorous bits, because nobody's sort of serious all the time. People do like, and especially if you got, I mean, humor is a lot about surprise and sort of the novelty of seeing something in a different way. And if you have things that work with point of views, and you got these point of views clash, it's almost unavoidable that some things will be funny, in my experience. So it's nothing that I have to think about at all when I write. It's just it happens. But obviously I want it to happen. It's not like I can't help myself. It's something that I welcome when it happens, but it will happen more or less automatically. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely true, because we bring ourselves into our writing. I think it's almost impossible to separate oneself from one's writing, and your characters are sort of versions of oneself, and the way they talk are versions of the way we talk. So it's almost impossible not to bring oneself into the books. And if you have a slightly quirky worldview, which I think is probably a good thing to have as an author, or an unusual worldview, or a worldview from just a little bit from just sort of around the side a bit, then you'll bring that too. So, and I think readers are interested in seeing something from a slightly different viewpoint. So
yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about sort of like the levity making books feel a little bit more like deep, or like really hits those hard-hitting moments that much harder, because if the whole thing is funny, then what is supposed to be serious? Yeah. I love that.
I also think that in a way that the comedy thing is really, if it doesn't happen, it's really hard to do. I mean, the hardest thing, if you think about your favorite films, or films that are really good, and I'm just saying films because it's sort of easier to pinpoint, I often find, because it's quite easy to keep in your mind. But finding something that you feel like is really good quality and is humorous at the same time, almost we've been educated to think that if something's really high value and highbrow, it can't really be that funny, because everything that's entertaining is a bit problematic in the intellectual department, which I think is a huge mistake. So
yeah, that's very interesting. We're going to pivot again. Speaking of films, Jasper worked in film for quite a bit before you started writing, and in fact, the Air started as a film script. So I wanted to ask what your journey was into writing novels. What enticed you to start?
Well, I mean, I did 20 years in the film industry. I started off as kind of T-boy, and ended up as kind of camera assistant, moving towards being a director of photography. But I wanted to be a director, of course, because everyone who enters the film industry wants to be a director, and I started writing film scripts for movies that I wanted to make. In those days, it was very, very difficult, very expensive to make films. You had to actually buy film, and you had to get film processed, and then you had to edit it, and all these sort of things. Nowadays, of course, it's much easier. But anyway, I thought if I write a really good script, then that will open the door, because you can always write your way into a really good movie script. So I thought that'd be a good thing to do. Then I was writing these scripts, and they weren't really very good. And someone said, maybe what you should do is write a treatment to the script. So write it as a short story, and then so you can get get your finger on the atmosphere, the pace, the characters, the plot, really give a good idea to your reader exactly what's going on, or even to yourself, and then write a screenplay from the treatment. Right. And I think that's a really good idea. So I started writing a story based on this idea that I had for a screenplay. And I'm dyslexic, and I didn't know until quite late in life, certainly until after I started writing. And so writing for me, up until the age of 27, which is when I started doing this, writing for me was always something that someone else did. And I knew I could fit words together, and they kind of worked. But I'd never tried writing at all. So age 27, there I am writing a short story, and the words started to sort of drift into patterns that I recognized as being not rubbish. And I thought, oh, aha, okay, there could be something in this. And I never wrote the screenplay. I just carried on writing short stories because now I didn't need to buy film. I didn't need to get actors. I didn't need to get locations. I could do everything on the page. And I kind of just fell in love with writing at that point. And then it was a mere 13 years before I managed to get published. So I had to learn a bit in the meanwhile, but I had a wonderful day job, and that is absolutely how I got into it, completely by accident, wanting to write screenplays.
That's so cool. Everybody's story into how they began writing is always so interesting.
But I mean, the interesting thing was that I'd gone into the film industry, so I knew where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in a storytelling environment. I've ever since the age of about 9 or 10, when I discovered that films were made, they didn't just happen on the screen. Ever since then, I wanted to work in the film industry, but in fact, I wanted to work in story. And professionally, I've worked in story my entire life. I have not done anything else at all. It's all been about story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good fun as well.
Yeah.
Have two careers, you see. Just sort of switch halfway.
I was just thinking, do I have a career at all?
Yeah, it was good for.
I've never had a proper job. Full disclosure.
No, me neither.
I was supposed to write a PhD and just drifted off into writing a book instead. So there was 3 bags full, and it was started out as a short story, and just got fatter and fatter because I had no idea who the murderer could be. So at some point, just started looking more like a novel, and and at some point I had a novel but no PhD, and I found a publisher, and then I had a job all of a sudden. So yeah, it was a interesting journey.
God,
really lucky
wonderful.
as well, obviously. Yeah, I know. So
Yeah, I would have loved to have started my career. I mean, I was 38, I think, when I got published. So 39, I think. So yeah, I mean, I came really very late at this, and I would have loved to have gone in there earlier. But would I have been able to do any of that stuff as a dissolute youth as I was? I don't know. Who knows? You just you can't run it again. So. Hey ho, I'm here.
And here you are. That's the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great, and I'm loving it still. It's such fun to write. So yeah.
Yeah, very true. I know it's a question that you get all the time: is how did you start? But I find it endlessly interesting to hear how folks get their starts. Speaking of the craft, I always ask authors what the best writing advice they ever received was, which is a tall ask. But I know we always have writers in the audience, and I think it's interesting.
I don't think I ever received any proper advice as such, but I think for me the key moment was when I realized that it's not an art, it's a craft. So when I always enjoyed sort of writing, at school, all the essays, all that stuff you do. I always loved that. I always thought it was extremely easy and didn't understand why other people were struggling with it. So in a way it came natural, but at the same time it would never have occurred to me to actually write a book, because books were something that happened to inspire people, who ingenious, who just sat down and wrote like flawless prose on white pages, and I knew that it wasn't me. So I thought about all kinds of other jobs. It could be journalism and all kinds of things that have something to do with writing, but the actual writing I thought wasn't for me. And at some point, I don't quite know how it happened, but it probably happened because I tried it. But the moment was like, this is actually, it's not cast in stone. You write something, you look at it, it might be a bit poor, it might be rubbish, but you can always go back and you can change it. And you can find out why it doesn't work, and it's like making a chair. Basically, you make something. If you can sit on it, it's a chair. If it falls over, maybe add a leg, but it's not it's not sort of this sort of act that you can't sort of go back from. It's a constant process, and the fact that it's a process makes it a lot easier to approach, I find, because you just feel like, I'll give it a go, and what's the worst that can happen? If it's not great, you can always press delete or get a fresh piece of paper. It's a lot less daunting than I thought it might be. And yeah, that for me, that was a moment when I felt like I could actually do that, and it was an important moment.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, advice to writers. I mean, basically write. I mean, that's the thing. Don't think about it. Just get on that keyboard and start pounding. You need to get that first 1,000 words down, and then the 10,000 and the 100,000. If that book's no good, you just write another. I mean, it's that. If you go from the rejection of your fourth novel to starting your fifth with no loss of enthusiasm, it's totally going to work. But I think the best piece of advice I got was actually well, it was kind of the worst piece of advice, or the only advice I got was so bad, was so awful, that I completely went against it, as should anyone. And I got an interview with an agent when I was trying to find an agent, and I'd written maybe 3 or 4 books by that time, and she was sort of flicking through it like this, and wasn't interested. And I think I'd only got the interview because she knew someone who knew me or whatever, I don't know. Anyway, and she said, well, I think the best thing to do, is sort of look at the bestseller lists and write something similar like that. And I went, oh, well, thank you.
That's pretty awful. Yeah.
Very kind.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I thought it was so incredibly the worst piece of advice that you could possibly give anyone, that I'd counter that, and I would say, you need to write as though there is no audience at all, and you write entirely for yourself and what you enjoy and what you find funny. Don't worry if you think, will the readers get this, or maybe there isn't the audience for this. It's like, no, don't write to market. Find your own market, find your own niche. And in a world in which authenticity is in extremely short supply at the moment, this is what you are marketing. You're marketing yourself, your authentic voice. It's absolutely you. And if you want to write about a family of zebras that live inside a 24-hour laundrette, then that's what you should do. Absolutely, if you can make it work, when you can make it work. And just don't worry about anyone who says like that, or you say the idea to someone and they go, really? And you don't ignore all that. What do they know? If you like it and you love it and it works for you, there's a very high possibility it's going to work for the audience out there. Just do your own thing, dance your own steps.
I had this really good friend from uni who was after a long interval, when I had already started writing the sheep thing. I met her on a train, and we were sort of chatting a bit, and then the moment she stepped out, we arrived at her stop, and she got out, and she was like, oh, what are you doing now, by the way? And I was like, I'm writing this sheep murder mystery, and the doors start to slide close, and she looked at me, and she was like, don't you have anything better to do? And then the door closed, and it was the last thing I ever heard of her. And now I can say with great honesty that no, there was absolutely nothing better I could have done with my time. And so comments like that really shouldn't faze you, because what do people know? Not a lot.
No, and there's no idea that's too absurd or too daft that cannot work with the right approach, the right tools, the right everything. Just putting all the words together. And sometimes the oddest ideas are the best ideas because you've had to tell your story in an unusual way to make it work, and then you're kind of rummaging a bit deeper in that sort of authorial toolbox, and you can come up with some other ideas about how you can make this narrative idea work. So I would always say, just absolutely go with your heart, completely go with your heart. This is you. This is your book. Ignore everyone else. Just go for it.
Well, this has certainly been the most wholesome Blind event. That really has warmed my heart. And I love it. I never get the same tidbits of advice twice. Like authors always have very different things, which is very interesting, folks, if you want to keep coming back and getting the best writing advice from our authors. Yes, thank you for that. I love that everything will work with the right lens. I think that that's exactly right. We have got a few more minutes here. So if anybody's got questions for Leonie and Jasper, again, the little thought bubble on the right side of your screen with that question mark is where you go to put those in there. We'd love to field those for you. I have a few quick rapid fire, lighthearted questions for each of you. Leonie, starting with you. If you could have tea with any of the residents of Sunset Hall, which one would you pick?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, at first I would have said Edwina, but then I thought of her biscuits, which are very questionable indeed. So I thought maybe Edwina is not the best choice. So I think it probably would be Hetty the tortoise, because she'd be quiet. She would be no trouble at all. She'd let me eat as much cake as I would want. Yeah, she should be good company. Although I'm not quite sure you'd be able to see any of the house share on their own, because obviously everyone else would be curious, and before you'd know it, they would all find an excuse to wander in and check you out.
That's very true. I think I would pick Edwina. I love her.
You're brave. You're braver than me.
Okay, Jasper. In an interview a while ago, I can't remember what year this was, you were asked that if you could step into any book, what book would you step into? And you said that in the interview, you said you wish that you had prepared a little bit more, and that maybe if you were asked again, you would have a different answer. Do you have a different, like a re-answer?
I don't. It's such a hard one, because I get the feeling. I mean, I think there's maybe a part in all writers where you do have this kind of imposter syndrome, and I kind of feel that if I wandered into a book, they'd all sort of look me up and down and go, "I'm sorry, do you want something?" And I'd go, "Oh no, I must be in the wrong room," and I'd walk out very sheepishly. Yeah, and they'd say, "Yes, what are you doing here?" I don't know really. It's still a hard one, because well, what book would you like to go in, and what would you do there? I mean, are you observing, or are you trying to sort of change the action, or what? It's a very, very hard one to kind of figure out, and I was trying to figure out a really, really good answer, but I just could not come up with them. And I think maybe there's something in me that the books that I really enjoy as books. And even if they're fantastically well filmed, I'm kind of thinking of like True Grit, which is made into a great movie. It's the reading of the books that I love, and it's that observation. Yes, you feel that you're in that character, Matty Ross, or any of those characters. You feel you're in your characters, but it is that sense of sort of observational delight that I think I enjoy with books. So I think being in one, I'm not sure that I'd feel, I don't think I feel right that I was there. I'd feel like an imposter. I think that I like
fair.
books for being books. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure really. It's kind of a not very good answer, really, is it? I should have thought of something really good and funny and did a little routine around it, I suppose. But
I think
yeah,
that's a
sort of
great answer. I think it's a
yeah,
smart answer.
I
yeah,
think
or
it'd be really
turn up.
stressful. I mean, of any
It would
book.
be,
I mean,
wouldn't
because
it?
books, traditionally you've got stuff happening in books that you don't necessarily want in your own life. You write this stuff in books because you don't want to encounter
Mm,
it out in the wild. And I mean, any book, anything
mm,
that's sort of enjoyable to read about is not really that enjoyable to live through. Because it's as a
mm.
personally, I can't think of any book I would find quiet and sedate enough for me to really having a good time in there as a person. So yeah.
That's so
Mm.
interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, yeah, so I thought maybe actually I could turn up in the play of Waiting for Godot and pretend to be Godot, and turn up literally 5 minutes. Go, oh, sorry, I'm late. Okay, where are we going? Like
Well,
dinner
that's a
or the
great
bar?
answer.
And then they'd go, oh, the bar, and then we'd all walk off, and everyone could go home.
Yeah.
It would be simple, wouldn't
I love that. My little theater major heart just fluttered all over.
it? Yep. There you go.
All
There
right,
you go.
we've got some questions. First, Leonie, have you lived? This is from Verena. Leonie, have you lived with sheep? Because your sheep are so sheep-like, and yet they seem to think delightfully like people.
Have I lived with sheep? Well, not as such. I've seen a lot of sheep. I've done something like I did like a little sheep apprentice, not a sheep apprenticeship because sheep don't really take apprentices, but a shepherd apprenticeship, just a mini one. So I've spent a few days with a shepherdess and then sort of learned a bit about sheep wrangling and all the practical stuff. But I think the real approach or the true answer is that I'm probably part sheep. Sort of a little part of me is sheep-like, and that sort of has natural affinity to the whole business of being a sheep. That's probably the most honest answer. It might be a bit weird, but it's also probably true.
We actually we're surrounded by sheep. I hope they don't attack because we are totally outnumbered here in Wales. But
Yes,
I came
true.
across a sheep. Right, so sheep have a lot of problems. So one problem they have is they really want to wake up dead. I mean, they really do. And a lot of being a shepherd is about trying to keep these things alive. But I came across a sheep 2 days ago. I was going for a walk up on the hills here, and it managed to get itself upside down on its back. Right, and even in a little dip, you can get on your back and you cannot get up again. And this poor ewe had been sitting there for quite a while, struggling with his little feet in the air, and all it needs is me to grab it and heave it on its feet, and that's it. So we have some interesting sheep encounters, but here's a good one. If there's a flock of sheep in a field, just wander up to the gate. And if you hand rear a sheep in our area of the world, I live in Radnorshire, the old county of Radnorshire, which is in Wales. They're called mollies if you hand rear them. So the little squidlings that you have to hand rear because they're so tiny or they don't have a mum or whatever, and they're often called mollies. And a molly sheep will act like a dog because they're very, very typed to human. And if you stand at a gate with a flock of sheep, a sheep may walk up to you and try to say hello, and it's very likely they're a molly and they were hand reared. And if they've got a lamb with them, they will show you their lamb. They're very, very sweet creatures, but we are surrounded. I just hope they don't figure out what we're doing with them, because if they get wind of what's going on, we could
Oh
be in big
no.
trouble.
Never mind
Yeah.
the rabbits. Yeah, with the sheep you have a real
No, never mind.
problem.
Yeah, the sheep. Yeah, I mean that's those incisors. I mean, yeah, yeah. Have you ever seen a Texel? Do you know must know sheep?
Yeah, they're quite
Sheep
massive. Yeah.
Texels, I mean, they are bruisers. I mean, they look at you like that. A Texel ram will look at you, and you'd go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not here. I'm gone." They always look like they want to start something. And Texel, and you can actually Google that Texel ram, and you'll see what I mean. They look like murder. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. I have a few things to look up. Texels and
Texels.
little sheep guys.
You learn so much during these talks, don't you?
I know, I really do.
Especially about sheep.
My brain's so much bigger than it was. Okay, Cindy has a question. How involved are you in selecting voice actors to record audiobooks for your stories? A good reader can really make a story and the characters come alive. By the way, thanks Jasper for including your voice in the Red Side Story audio.
Well, we don't really have a. Sometimes we if they the thing is that if you're an author, you realize very quickly that you're working with a lot of very dedicated professionals who can bring a lot of expertise to the project. So you kind of like take a little step back and you say, okay, you guys understand about talking books, and you've probably got a good idea about who would be right for the role because this is what you do. So the only time I've really been asked is when they had a choice of two, and they said, "Look, who do you think? We're kind of think about it. We're not sure. Who do you think?" And then I say, "Oh, well, I prefer this person, but whatever you think." And that's kind of generally it. Voice actors are tremendously good. I mean, because I'm dyslexic, as I said earlier, I do all my reading on audio, and it can transform a book, but it can also kill a book stone dead. So, there are some readers I just love, and there are others that I cannot read a book if I'm hearing their voice. I just don't like it. So yeah, it's tricky, but I generally leave it to the experts.
Yeah, I'm not terribly involved either. As you say, sometimes you get a choice of two. But I think for me, I find it hard to make friends with audiobooks, I mean, especially of my own stuff, because the voice I hear in my head is so different from it. So whatever they do and however well it is done, I can sort of listen to it and think this is really well done, but it's still, in a way, it doesn't feel like my book. I just, sort of leave that to people who are a bit more objective about the whole thing and yeah, try not to get in the way. Mostly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see how that would feel that way. I assume this is geared towards Leonie, but by all means, Jasper, come on in if you have an answer. Janet asks, how do you feel about submitting your comedic voice to the translation process?
It's the same, not only the comedic, but the whole thing. It goes through a certain process, and then what comes out in the other end is obviously different. But I do have a translator I really like working with, so it's in a way it's an enjoyable process, especially since I can really sort of see both sides of the coin and really try to help. If the translator isn't sure, or if I've got a very clear idea of what I want and feel like this is not quite reflected in this, so I can really it's a process, and there's some things that you can't bring across if you got a certain metaphor which works in German but not in English, and you just have to just accept that certain things will not come across the same way. But on the other hand, you will also be able to do stuff that you couldn't do with the original. So if you're a bit playful, a bit freer, then you might be able to, have a different kind of word play that didn't work or wouldn't have happened in the original. So in translation, there's always stuff lost, but there's also stuff won, in my opinion. And from another angle, I really enjoy reading my book in English because in a way it's like reading your own stuff for the first time, because it's my story but it's no longer my words, so that makes it a really fresh reading experience, and it helps me to get a quite a fresh look at the whole thing, which it's fun, but it also helps me to maybe see the story better. So I really like the process. I don't think a lot is lost. I think there's always for everything that doesn't work, there will be something else that just works a tiny little bit better. And I think my style of writing seems to lend itself to being translated, at least into English. I even know of German readers who marched into an international bookstore determined to buy the English original of my books. So it doesn't seem to be that clear cut. And yeah, it's an interesting process, but not something I'm terribly worried about.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
I
great.
mean, translating. Yeah. Oh, sorry,
No, go on.
Lily. Oh, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about translation, of course, it's not just translation. It's not word translation. It's not sentence translation. It's cultural translation as well, and that's why really good translators are worth their weight in gold because they can see what we're trying to say. Because of course, what's really going on is not what we're talking about. We're talking, subtext and all these sort of rather deeper inferred narratives that we authors like to play with and readers enjoy so much. So a lot of the time you have to do a cultural interpretation and translation as well, and that takes a lot of skill. So I often get emails from my translators saying, I think there's a joke about this somewhere, and I just wondered what you were talking about. And then I go, oh yeah, there is. And they go, right, I thought it was something. So you get that. But I'm translating. My biggest market in translation is in fact German. So I have readers because Germans speak English very well. I can actually sell my books twice in Germany because people want to read it in German and in English. And then I can say to them, I say, well, what was the translation like? And they go, no, it's good. It's good. Good. Like that. I went,
That's
okay,
a win-win situation. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Same with French translations. Yeah, she was really really good. Roxanne Azimi. She did fantastic translations, and people who read them in both said, no, it just worked perfectly. She got it all right. Yeah.
Yeah, we love our translators for sure. Worth their weight
Oh
in
yeah.
gold. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
One more quick question from Megan. Will there be more nursery crime novels?
This comes round again, this question. It's like every time I close a series or write a sequel, it's like, I know we want this one in another series. I don't know is the answer. I mean, I'll never say no, never. There's something I like about the nursery crime series. These are police procedurals with nursery rhyme characters. First one's a Humpty Dumpty murder mystery, and the second one is a Goldilocks missing persons case. So it's retelling nursery rhymes as police procedurals, and for me they're very much a kind of juvenilia. I think it's me sort of firing off in all directions and just being silly and having fun with it, and I kind of like that, and I think maybe I'd like to get back to doing that, maybe for a third. I do have a plot, I have some ideas, and in the second book we allude to this third in the series, which is going to be called The Last Great Tortoise Race, and I'm going to base it around sort of Aesop's fables, I think, and bring them to life, and it will be held in the streets of Reading, and it'll be the annual tortoise v hare race, which the gamblers always seem to lose out on. So clearly, someone's nobbling the hare every single time, and it obviously points towards big business and sort of mob interests, I think, who control gambling. So it's it's a bit of fun, but never say never. But no plans at present.
That's wonderful. Thank you all for your questions. They're always so good. Jasper and Leonie, I want to know what you're working on, and then we will move to our door prize winners. Can you tell us what's next?
Well, it's a really short answer. I'm not working properly at the moment. So full disclosure, I always I tell myself I need quite a long time to recharge and get fresh ideas. So basically, for the last half year, I've done a bit of stuff, but basically I'm lurking around waiting for a new idea, because I feel you really have to sort of road test your idea, and you have to be sure that it's going to carry you for a year or a year and a half. So I'd rather wait around for an idea a bit longer, which obviously goes against everything I said before about just sit down at your desk and start writing. It's going to be okay. I know I said that, but at the same time, I really like my leisure, and I feel like leisure and not doing anything is actually for me a quite important part of the process. Whether it is because it's really necessary or whether it's just because I like doing it, it remains to be seen. But at the moment, I just I'll pot around my garden, play with my dog, and obviously write down a few notes here and there, but no serious work at the moment, I'm afraid.
I love that for you, Leonie.
I think that's very important. My cousin Katie Fforde is also a writer, and she says that you need to fill the well, however you do that. And if that's walking around the garden with the dog or doing nothing, then that is refilling the well, because if you don't refill the well, you can't draw from it. Which I think is the best excuse for not doing anything I've ever heard, and I'm totally going to stick with that one. So I'm writing the 8th in the Thursday Next series. This will be the series ender, the series finale. So I've got to do something, I think, kind of special. It's really dedicated to the Thursday Next readers, people who follow the series all the way from 2001. And it's a 25-year journey. So thank you, obviously, for staying with me. It's going to be called The Dark Reading Matter. And the dark reading matter is the area within the book world that is, it's only calculated that we can actually read 20% of the reading matter that we can read is only 20% of the entire possibility of stuff that you could read. So all the rest of it, that 80%, belongs in the dark reading matter that we can't access. And then it's basically Thursday Next doing what Thursday Next does in the book world, dealing with literary problems. We've got mysteriously, Shakespeare's plays seem to be all now having Scooby-Doo endings, which is obviously a cause for great concern within the literary profession. And someone's up to it, someone's doing it, and who are they doing it and why? And there's always many, many threads in Thursday Next books that have somehow got to be entwined together with her domestic life and her relationship with her husband and everything. So it'll be a bit of fun, but it's going to be the series ender. So I've got to get it. I think I've got to get it just right. Yeah.
And we're very excited for Dark Reading Matter over here. All right, let's do some door prizes, huh? I love this part. It feels so special. Preparing for my future as a bingo caller, probably. Okay. For the $25 gift card, we have Megan Bailey. Congratulations. We got to get some clapping emojis or something up in here.
Yeah.
Yay.
That was pathetic, wasn't it?
Go Megan. Yeah. Go Megan. How about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, no, it's great.
A bit better.
We have 2 more. Yeah, each one will get included.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. Okay, $50 gift card winner is Joe O'Connor. Congratulations.
Yay! Go Joe! Yay! Woo! Woo! There we go.
It's great. Okay, the big winner. It's coming.
Okay.
Get warmed up. Ellen McGrath won our $75 gift card.
Yay, Ellen! Go, Ellen!
Congrats! Wow.
Well done. Well done. Well done.
Wonderful job, guys. Megan, Joe, and Ellen, I will email you after this and give you some instructions for how to redeem your gift cards. Thank you again for RSVPing, for attending our little digital space. We know that these events are, not everybody loves being digital these days for good reason, but we always have such a good time, and we are able to bring folks from different corners of the world. So thank you for continuing to support us here. Jasper and Leonie, thank you for joining us. All of your knowledge. I haven't smiled so much for a little while, so thank you for giving my cheeks a workout. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks, y'all.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.